me share a little frustration. Quite recently, maybe, I don't know, 2, 3 months ago,
Yeah.
at the border in Kedah, okay, it was a long weekend. People went across to Thailand. I don't know. You already know they're going to be, some of them are going to be using cannabis. And then they test them at the border and they find positive. And some of them accidentally, they had it in the drink. They didn't know. They had it in the tom yum. They didn't know. They had it in the ice cream. They didn't know.
Oh,
Now yes, they have tom yum cannabis there. They have ice cream cannabis there. Okay. And then what are you going to do? Charge them now? Throw them in jail?
hello and welcome to another episode of What Now, Joma Lepa, with me, Syed Amir Haikal. So apparently I'm hosting alone again for the second episode in a row, but no worries. We have a lovely guest that we will be having on for this episode. We'll be touching upon on a very, very interesting topic. I think a lot of young people will be very interested to dive into it because we'll be talking about drugs in this episode, right? But more on the rehabilitation side of it, right? So yeah, so I'm alone for this episode, but no worries. Hopefully, Haziq will come on the next episode when we interview another amazing Malaysian or another amazing guest, right? So before we start our episode, before we give a little introduction to our guest, let's give the audience what an idea of what is What Not Jom Malepa, right? So What Not Jom Malepa is a nation building podcast, right? Which is created by me, Haikal, and also Haziq, right? Where we want to explore the different types of policies that can help better Malaysia, and also make sure that we're able we'll also give a platform to share inspiring stories of Malaysians doing really wonderful things for this nation. Right? It could be in any form. It could be in any form, whether it be in business or making pointing creating a culture whatsoever. So this podcast in itself, we want to make sure that we give an idea of uh, what nation building is for Malaysia. So for this episode in itself, we want to talk about on the Drug Dependants Act that was recently passed in Parliament in 2024, right? So this has been um, this has been heavily been discussed among a lot of policymakers, and there is still some room for us to make sure that this make sure that this drug dependent act um, there are some criticism that happens in the drug dependent act, right? So we have an expert here to talk about the history and also discuss about this act in itself, because um, there is some loopholes that we need to discuss, and also make sure that this act becomes better, that it can help a lot of people who are suffering or dealing with uh, being a drug addict, right? So without further ado, please welcome Dr. Prem.
Hey, hi, Tom. Thank you
No
very
worries,
much
no
for
worries.
having me on the podcast.
Mhm.
As you rightfully said, yeah, this is a very important discussion, and it has been going on for a while, even before the Drug Dependent Act was announced, was debated, was implemented, and then now it's out and it's still being discussed. But I think that it's a long way to go before you actually see changes, lah, and people appreciate what this Drug Dependent Act is about, and we get our act together and find a way to manage the drug dependent act. So thank you very much for having me, Haika. I'm excited to be
No
here.
worries, no worries. We're very excited to have you on as well, because I think it's our first time somebody actually recommending us to do an interview with somebody, which is
Okay.
you. Yeah, 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 yeah. So before we jump into the episode itself, let's just give like a brief idea of how the structure of the podcast will look like, right? So firstly, we will have the first segment, which is the segment we'll be talking about Dr. Prem's worldview, right? About his life, inspiring story of how he overcome drug addiction, right? And also creating Solace Asia, and then we'll jump into the bread and butter of this episode, discussing on the policy in itself. And then lastly, the third segment, we're going to talk about his reflections and maybe some youth-related stuff regarding drug addiction. So let's start with the first segment on his worldview, right? So before that, maybe you want to introduce to the audience about who you are, what you do, and maybe a
Sure,
little background about your profession.
sure, sure. Okay. So, my name is Prem Kumar, and I'm a psychologist by training. So, my area of work mainly has been my training is in psychology, but my area of work has mainly always been in addictions and comorbid disorders, which I'll talk about in a little while. Now, personally, I have had my struggles with addictions as well, and I guess that's been my intrinsic motivation to do this. Yeah, to share with others what went wrong and the fact that it is possible to change. Change is definitely possible. I think that's the key message that we need to share with others. I battled with alcoholism for many years of my life. Most of my teenage years was lost to alcoholism, and pretty much as any other story with addiction, I drifted away from the family, drifted away from career, from work, and I ended up isolating myself and succumb in the sense that I lost my career, lost everything, and went into depression. Now, what helped me personally is the fact that I was told one day that I have a disease.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and this was a transformation for me and a big point for me in my life where I thought, hey, you know what? It's not my fault. Look, this happened because I'm ill. I'm not well. And this was told to me by another psychiatrist, an addiction specialist in Singapore at that point of time. And I'm talking about 20 years ago. Sorry, 23 years ago, 22 years ago.
Oh, okay.
Um, yeah. So for me, that was the moment which made me start to think, okay, I've been accused, I've been scolded, I've been stigmatized by the community, by family, by friends, I've been shunned away, and I went to isolate, thinking that I don't deserve to be living a normal life, right? But now, when someone tells me, hey, you got a disease, so I'm like, really? What's the disease called? It is called addictions. Ah,
Mm-hmm.
so what do I need to do now, doctor? And then he goes, you need to get into treatment. Really? There's a treatment for this? I says, yes, there is. And what do I need to do? You need to stop using your brain to think because your brain is not well, right? And your brain made you sick because addiction is a disease in the brain.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so I said, okay lah, boleh lah. So how long is this going to take? And then he says,
Yeah, yeah,
why?
yeah.
You have all the time in the world. What's your problem? What's your rush, right? So at that point, yeah, was my moment lah. And I got into a program. I went through the treatment, then to understand that change is possible, and it became my dream or became an obsession for me, another
Mm-hmm.
addiction for me to understand the science behind all these treatment approaches. And I went back to uni. I studied. That's motivated me to start Solace ultimately.
So basically, the way that you created Source was based on your personal journey and struggles as well, right?
Yeah, and the fact that change is
Mm-hmm.
possible. Now, to me, again, personally, I thought I would never stop. Okay, the fact is,
Mm-hmm.
the truth is, yeah, or rather, the truth is that I couldn't stop, so I gave up wanting to stop. You know, until something happened in my life, and I became really, really ill, and I was on my deathbed, and the doctor said, "You're gonna die after all. Why don't you give this a shot?" Okay? So that's when change happened. There are many others out there who want to change, who want to stop,
Mm-hmm.
they just don't know how to. So for them, the motivation is there to stop. So I thought, if someone like me um, could be helped, then why can't others help be helped? You see? So that's
Mm-hmm.
that's that's my motivation.
Right, right, right. I think people do struggle a lot with battling addiction because it's something that it's you know I guess in to an extent it's pretty taboo, right? I
Yeah.
mean,
Well.
mhm.
Sorry. Go on, Michael. Sorry.
Oh yeah, 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 so sorry. Yeah, so I guess it's in a way it's pretty taboo, but like I also feel like people do misunderstand the process of healing, right? The
Yeah.
process of trying to be better, try to
Yeah.
rehab from it. So maybe you want to explain a little bit about that.
Okay. Sure. Now the thing is this: we know today that I mean, even the fact that the Drug Dependent Act has been established is because we recognize that people are doing this not because they want to. After a while, it's not about fun anymore. It's about a need, you see. So we realize that, and that's why the government is realizing or recognizing that, you need to be treated first before you be punished for your crimes. Because yes, you commit a crime because of the addiction, you steal, you rob, you do whatever you need to do to feed the addiction, right? But you still have to be punished for the crime you commit, for the law you broke, right? But the disease ultimately has to be treated. If not, you're going to continue committing crimes to feed the disease, and you're going to keep going in and out of jail. So studies have shown that almost 2/3 of our prisons, have people with drug-related offenses.
Oh,
So 2/3 of the population, as long as they're not treated, they're going to keep going back into prison. You need to treat them, and that's a lot of taxpayers' money anyway. Right?
it is.
Yeah, stigma is one thing, as you rightfully said, but the other thing is educating the public to make people understand. Yes, it's not nice. It's a bad thing. They get in trouble, but as long as you don't treat the disease, they're going to continue doing this. So we have
True, true.
we have moved the country. I must say, Malaysia, we have, compared to say 10 years ago when we started Solace. When we started Solace about 12 years ago, yeah, I know that people underestimated what we could do in the sense that why would you want to treat addictions? Who's going to come for treatment? How many experts are there in the industry in the country who know how to do this? So there were lots of objections. There were lots of oppositions in starting this. But as we progress and we saw changes and people recovered, and as we progressed our core programs, our treatment approaches, our businesses, I think the realization slowly came in.
Yeah. I mean, I think especially when when the pandemic came in, I think that also highlighted the
Yeah.
the importance of mental health, right? But but before we move on to the second segment, right? I just want to know, like, you advocate for more compassionate and science-based approach to addiction treatment, right? So, do you think Malaysia is still struggling to fully embrace this model to make sure that we're able to stop the cycle of people getting into addiction and all?
Okay. Now, this is a very important, but it's an age-old question, which we are still talking about. If you ask me, I'll say we're doing okay. Like I said, compared to 10 years ago, we are way better today. But the problem is, it's a police and thief kind of thing. Okay, the problem is the drug situation is getting worse and worse and worse. Our approaches are trying to catch up. So this is getting worse. We're trying to catch up. So this disparity will always be there. Yeah. For example, there are lots of new kinds of drugs that are now floating in the market already. Right. Now there's something called synthetic drugs. It's not new. It's been around for a while, but the treatment for synthetic drugs has still not been identified properly. We have synthetic drugs that cannot be tested in the urine. So when someone is suddenly psychotic, now synthetic drugs causes psychosis. Yeah? So you see youngsters, even students, becoming suddenly psychotic, and their symptoms are very similar to schizophrenia. And then they go to the hospital. The doctor looks at them and says, "Oh, you've got schizophrenia." They test the urine; it's negative, but actually he's not schizophrenia. Actually, substance induced. Okay, so the treatment approaches for these things have not been properly established yet. Okay, so as we try and identify treatment approaches, the type of problems keep going more and more. So there's a gap here. There's a huge gap. Now, in order for us to fill this gap, I think a few things need to happen. One, the good thing, we have changed the law. We have amended the law, however. Okay, one. Two, we need more professionals. We need experts in the industry, which is an age-old problem. All industries will tell you, hey, we need more experts. Hey, we need better doctors. We need better lawyers. We need better engineers, right? Three, the third most important thing is I think we need to be open. When I say we, I'm talking about the government approaches, Kementerian's approaches. We need to be open to changes and accepting expertise from other countries. We need to learn. For example, I'll give you a simple example. As clinicians ourselves in Solace, for from the beginning when we started treating people, we used something called the abstinence model of treatment. Okay, we were sole believers that addiction means abstinence. If you're a drug addict, you need to stop. If you're an alcoholic, you need to stop. This is the approach we use. Now we realize there's such a thing as harm reduction. There's such a thing as sustainable recovery. You know, if you can't stop your drugs, then you reduce the harm that it causes to the nation and to the family. So we have had to adapt and evolve our methods. And I think the government needs to do that. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And this can only happen if you're open to changes. You
Definitely,
know,
definitely.
I will just add to that. For example, yeah, we have our agency anti-data kebangsaan. Okay, we've been doing the same thing for decades, not years, but decades. Okay, has it helped? Yes, it has helped. But why are we not open to public sectors coming and supporting the government? Okay,
Mm-hmm.
recently in 2020, as you rightfully said, after the pandemic, yeah, globally, many countries, not most, many countries realize mental health is an issue and addiction is a form of a mental health problem. Now, one of the countries, Oman, I can tell you, opened a public tender. You know, the government opened a tender, the private public partnership tender, and they invited
Yeah.
other countries around the world, okay, the PPP lah, to
Mm-hmm.
tender to operate their rehab. They said, hey guys, we have a problem. Come, if you have the expertise, come and help us treat. And we participated, Solace participated, and we won the bid. Now we have the technology in Malaysia, and Oman is recognizing it. You know, and we are operating an amazing rehab and a detox hospital in the desert in another country. See, I'm saying with a bit of energy here because it's like we have the technology here, guys. Why can't we do it in Malaysia? Why can't Malaysia recognize this and says, "Come lah, come and help us"? It's
Mm-hmm.
not about it's not the money, you know. It's the fact that we have the technology, but we are not optimizing it. That's the point I'm trying to make.
Mm-hmm. I see, I see. I think maybe we can actually jump into the second segment later and talk about that, right? But I think it's really
Sure.
cool that your initiative, your efforts came from your personal struggle with addiction, and also we jumped a little bit about your ideas on your why Malaysia is struggling for fully embracing this model, and a little bit of um, understanding the stigmatization of the process of healing from addiction, right? So um, I think this concludes for the first segment. We'll see you in the second segment. See you then. Welcome back to the episode with me, Heikel, and Dr. Prem. So in the first segment, we touched briefly about Dr. Prem's upbringing and also his worldview on drug addiction, and also
Mm.
we get a little bit of his thoughts on Malaysia's efforts in trying to fully embrace a sustainable model to make uh, for those who are dealing with drug addicts, right? So for this second segment, we're going to
Mm.
jump onto the bread and butter of this episode, which is basically discussing on the Drug Dependent Act that was amended and passed last year, right? So I'm I've read a little bit about this policy in itself, though I am not an expert in this field. So maybe Dr. Prem, you want to jump and discuss and tell the audience like what what's this act about, and what does this new act talked about what does this new act changes from the previous one.
Okay. Um, Thank you very much, Haikal. I think that's an important topic. And again, you know, it's a very big area, lah, yeah. It's a very big topic because the act covers quite a few things. Now, I'm not an expert, uh, but I was involved in the act as well because at the second phase, when they were reviewing it, some of us were invited to the parliament to sit as industrial experts, and I was one of them to give our opinions and views on what we think as industrial experts uh, will be helpful. Now, I think importantly, again, let's look at the big picture. The big picture, the good thing is that now we recognize that this is a disease, okay, and we're not going to punish people who are sick. We can't punish diabetes and make cure it. We can't punish cancer and cure it, right? You need to
Yeah,
treat
yeah,
it.
yeah.
So the logic is that, and the good thing is that okay, this act helps recognize people are ill and they need to be treated, and they're not going to be thrown into jail. But in order to do that, of course, there are various things that need to happen. So that's the good thing. Now, what I think would work better is for the act to be implemented successfully, we need to have non you have need to have private sector people from the industry to be involved in implementing it. People who are non-biased, people who have a little bit more experience working with this population. I think that will help. One more area that we see is, as was stated in the document, the
Mm-hmm.
family involvement. Yeah. Now
Yes.
we know. Yeah. You see, there are different types of so population that are involved in addiction. So you have people from different socio-economic statuses. And the reason I say that is because people from different socio-economic statuses use different types of substances. Okay. So you see the fishermen using certain type of substances, for example, professionals using certain type of substances, for example. But one thing common they all have is that when they get into treatment and they go back into the community, the family or the community, that support is not really there. Right. So part of the act says, again, I'm not an expert, that if they make it compulsory for families to be involved, and the families are not involved, they could be fined. Now, by doing that, the families won't be involved at all.
Mm-hmm.
Why should I bother to even send my son now when I know he's not going to attend treatment, and then on top of that, I'm going to be fined, right? So I think that's something we should review in that sense, like.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then there's a committee that's formed as part of the ACTA to decide on those who go to drug rehabs, or those who go to private rehab, or those who actually go to the AADK. Now,
Mm-hmm.
I think this is a very, very important committee, and it should comprise of industrial experts, people from various sectors. Right? That's one thing I feel. And another thing which I feel which is very important is this whole treating of people with addiction should fall under Kementerian Kesihatan, I feel.
Okay.
Not under the KDN. Mainly because if we say this is a disease or this is illness, then it should be held by the Ministry of Health, not by
Right.
the
Right.
Ministry of
Right.
Internal Affairs, right? Because when it's under KDN, yes, there's a threat to the country, but when it's under KDN, there's still that thinking that it's against the law, it's protecting the country, there's still that bias there. So I feel doctors should be involved and Ministry of Health should be holding this portfolio, not
Yes.
the
Definitely.
yeah. This is my thoughts. These are my thoughts.
Yeah. Definitely. I think I actually I had this conversation with Taku yesterday regarding this.
Okay.
Yeah. Just irony you just brought it up. You know. But yeah. But I do think it's important that this should be under the uh, overview of the Ministry of Health, because they have a lot of experts in the field. Because
Yes. Yes.
yeah, because if you put it under KD, it feels like a mismatch.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, yeah, it's a huge mismatch.
Yeah. But I understand there are various reasons why it can't be completely under the Ministry of Health. Maybe a joint
Mm-hmm.
department, because you see, one of the biggest problems that AADK has been having for decades is the lack of expertise. And it's not their fault. It's the fact that we don't have enough psychiatrists or psychologists who are trained in addictions. Forget the fact that we don't even have enough psychiatrists in the country, or only now we have psychologists coming up. What about those who specialize in addictions? We don't have enough, and AADK, they have budget restraints. They have so many difficult measures. How are they going to employ these experts? Whereas Ministry of Health already has doctors and already has specialists you can tap on. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
And that's why when people go into private treatment like in Solace, there's a fee to it. It's not cheap. It's expensive because the whole process of managing the operations of the and the employing the expertise, there's a cost to it. So not everyone can afford Solace. So then when people call us, we are like, okay, we can't afford this, but we want to help. We want to help. So what do? We refer you, and there are very limited places to refer. In fact, that's also one of the reasons that motivated us to start outpatient clinic and motivated us to start subsidized programs. We have very subsidized programs where Solace pays 70% of your fee or even 50% of your fee, and you pay the balance. But how many people can we do that for? So I think if we can somehow find a way, I don't know if it's too late, to bring AADK and MOH together, KKM together, I think that'll make a huge difference.
Yeah, definitely. Like, probably discuss it through because I'm pretty sure that based on what I've read, based on your comments as well, this act was also like there was a lot of loopholes in itself, right?
Yeah,
Like could there's a lot that could potentially be discussed.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
And that was also one of the things that was brought up. It's like we maybe we rushed into getting it out. We could have taken more time to deliberate and discuss and find ways to make sure there are limited or no loopholes at all. Maybe we rushed into it because now is things are very quiet.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, kan?
I feel like this type of bill should be publicly discussed and actually give more attention because
Yeah,
since it's talking about drug addiction, right? And I think it's really important to get it out there.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, but
Because
mhm.
no, sorry, go on,
Yeah, yeah,
please go on.
okay, okay, sure, sure. But I'm actually curious, like, when we look at this act, right, and we look at our health system in um, like how can what other countries can we compare it with so that we can have a better execution in implementing this law, so
Mm,
that yeah, so that we are able to properly treat these people.
mm. Well, I mean, let's look at our neighboring country, lah. Okay,
Singapore,
uh,
okay.
let's talk about Thailand. Let's talk about Thailand. Okay,
Oh,
so
okay, sure,
Thailand
sure, sure, sure.
tried to, yeah, they brought in the cannabis, where for tourism purposes they thought it would be good, and they kind of legalized cannabis in the country there in Thailand. But it didn't work. Sadly, they failed, right? And it got so out of hand that now they're trying to go back and change things. But that period of time has caused so much of disruption to the economy, and people are already used to doing things cannabis related. It has also affected our country. Where you have very often we see students, not even students, anybody going across to Thailand for holidays, long weekend, they come back across the border, they get tested and they're positive. And what do we do?
Yeah,
You know,
I mean,
what do we do?
I
Charge
don't think
them?
we do. Mm-hmm.
In fact, let me share a little frustration. Quite recently, maybe, I don't know, 2, 3 months ago,
Yeah.
at the border in Kedah, okay, it was a long weekend. People went across to Thailand. I don't know. You already know they're going to be. Some of them are going to be using cannabis, and then they test them in the border and they find positive. And some of them accidentally they had it in the drink. They didn't know. They had it in the tom yum. They didn't know. They had it in the ice cream. They didn't know.
Oh,
Now they have tom yum cannabis there. They have ice cream cannabis there. Okay? And then what are you going to do? Charge them now? Throw them in jail? So I think no, the point I'm trying to make is before we implement any changes, we need to really, really, really study. We really need to bring in experts, talk to them, and get advice. And if need be, bring people to implement it. We don't have the expertise, like we
yeah,
need to
yeah.
admit it.
Sure, sure, sure.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
I was just going to say other countries like quite a few European countries where cannabis has been legalized, medical marijuana, they have tested it, they failed. They have the expertise. In fact, if you want to talk about harm reduction, okay,
Mm-hmm.
harm reduction means basically, as I shared earlier, where you reduce the harm. Now, we have done an excellent job with harm reduction of opioids, mainly heroin. Okay, so it took us decades to get it approved, and we learned from other countries. We learned, if I'm not mistaken, Australia was a good influence on us. So we brought in something called methadone, and we gave methadone to heroin addicts, and we told them, guys, come see us, give us your needles, exchange your needles, don't use needles. We never said stop heroin. We used harm reduction. Now that reduced HIV tremendously. You know, very successful. Why? We were open to learning. That's my point.
Mm-hmm.
So I think
I see.
now, yeah, my point is we should be open to learning, lah. That's
Yeah,
basically
yeah.
what I'm trying to say.
But but since the bill has already been passed, and I guess now it's being implemented, so how can we move like forward from this to make sure that there is continuous improvement from it, right? Like how can as our ministers to properly look into this policy back, or maybe like even like efforts into making sure that the private sectors are actively involved in this.
Yeah, I think you just gave a good idea, Haikal. I think we should revisit it. Don't implement it yet. Bring more people from the private sectors. Get experts from other countries to sit in. Form a board which is non-biased, government, private experts, industrial experts. Form a committee. Review everything step by step, and then implement it. Because once you implement it to make changes, it's going to be susah lah, sangat susah.
Yeah, definitely. Um, but like, can we like understand how urgent this matter is? Like, as somebody who is like not in the scene, right? Like,
Yeah,
how would you explain how urgent this matter is to like properly review this policy?
okay. To answer your question bluntly, super urgent.
Okay.
It's
All right.
critical. Okay, and I say that because we work in the industry and we treat people with addictions. We are seeing youngsters. Look at the stats from AADK. A large population of people with addictions are youngsters, and these are the future generation, future leaders of the country. And like I said earlier, the substances they're abusing are not only causing harm to the body, it's causing harm to the brain. Yeah, they're becoming psychotic. So it's critical, if you ask me, that we do this immediately. Dadah musuh masyarakat, musuh nombor satu masyarakat.
Mm-hmm.
It's a fact. It's a fact. It's a slow, very silent destroyer, which is just not only killing the youngsters, killing the ethics, killing the community. It's also destroying the futures of the country. So it's
Yeah,
like critical. So that's what I
very
would say.
critical. All right. I think we've discussed a lot based on this act. I think we've discussed on how we can improve it, the problems with the misalignment with different ministries, and also we also discussed or on the fact the problems of having the agency anti kebangsaan or AADK having full control over overseeing this act, right? So I think we're gonna move on to the third segment where we actually talk about the rising addiction in youth, because you also mentioned that it's critical, right? Considering that there's a lot of young people who are addicted. So I think let's actually expand that topic, that area, in our third segment, right? So thank you for listening to the second segment. We'll move on to the third segment. Welcome back to the last segment, which is the third segment of this podcast. So we briefly discussed on his worldview, and also we discussed briefly on what the problems and also how we can move forward within the with the with the with the Drug Dependent Act of 2024, right? So now we're going to move on to the third segment, and I think this is a lot of a segment where I think a lot of young people are interested to look into, because I think you've also mentioned that previously before we ended the second segment that there's a huge chunk of young people who are addicted, right?
Yeah,
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 yeah.
yeah. So I think considering it's a huge issue, let's actually have a deep dive on this matter, right? So I was able to read the reports that you guys published. I think it was in 2024. Am I right? Yeah, I think it was
Mhm.
about youth addiction. Yeah, if I'm not mistaken. So the report says that that 50% of the recorded addiction cases involve youth, right? So we already know that this signals a huge crisis, but I want to know, like, what are the key issues driving an addiction among young people today?
Okay, okay, sure. Now, as we shared earlier, the younger generation or the youth now are getting more involved in this. What are some of the issues? One reason I would think is the easy access or availability. Okay, it's not difficult to buy substances, and then the other thing is that some of the substances cannot be detected. So it's like they get a kick out of it. They're doing something wrong, something illegal, yeah, they cannot be caught. And sadly, one of the more common ways with the youth here, I'm talking about the youth, the younger generation, is this vaping, right?
Ah, yes,
Uh,
sweeping.
yeah, vaping is, yeah, we all know. I'm trying to remember the name of the drug. There's a new drug in Hong Kong, which has been spreading badly, where they, I can't remember the street name now. they're adding this chemical into the vape and they're vaping it, and it causes literally zombify people, and they cannot be detected.
Zombie as in like they are acting like zombies, or
Yeah,
they're just
yeah,
like really high. Oh, okay, all right.
yeah, because it affects the brain, and it's
I
becoming
see, I
so
see.
popular. Yeah, it'll be in Malaysia real soon. It's not going to. It's already in Singapore, but not that
Mm-hmm.
bad yet because they can't detect it. It's in a chemical. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's bad. Space oil. It's called space oil drug. Yeah. Um, and it's probably in Malaysia already. We just don't know about it because people have not identified it's drug related. They think it's mental illness and they think it's psychosis. You know? This is another problem. Um, Easy availability because people can now buy it online. There is the dark web, which some people have access to, and it's
Mm-hmm.
difficult for the police to track them and trace them. Again, because it's under the radar, and it's some of these substances are not under in the Poison Act drug yet because constantly new stuff keeps surfacing. You know, and some of these chemicals can be cooked. You bring in the
Mm-hmm.
chemicals separately, right? And then you know the recipe. You sit in the house and you cook it. So
Mm-hmm.
the youth experimenting. And the thing is, not everybody becomes addicted. We need to understand that there's a small percentage of the population that will become addicted. Why? Because they are predisposed. Why? Because there are genetic predispositions as well. Then, of course, there is the psychosocial influences that condition the behavior further. If everybody is smoking weed every day and I'm sleeping in the same room, I'm going to smoke as well. It's a matter of time. Okay. And if I'm already predisposed, if I come from a genetically, I've got a family who are rich with addictions, then I'm at a higher risk. There's a 30 to 50% genetic predisposition stuff. Okay.
Right,
So
right, right.
yeah, so there are so many factors. I guess the next question we should be discussing is what do we do since we know?
Yes, what do we do?
Excuse me. Especially with the youth. My answer to that would be education. You know,
Mm-hmm.
uh, having those scary pictures on cigarette boxes don't help. You know, the cigarette boxes cut where you have people with cancer, hole in the neck and tongue and all with tumor. That never stopped people from smoking.
Yeah, the irony is that it's to fear, right? But then in the
Yeah,
end, it doesn't
yeah,
really work.
yeah. It's against the law, death sentences. That never really stopped people from doing things because it's a disease. If you tell somebody with cancer, I will hang you, if you don't stop your cancer, I will throw you in jail. If you don't stop eating carrot cake because you're diabetic, I'll sentence you to jail. Devil will still eat carrot cake. So I think scare tactics don't work. I think it's not medication.
Yeah, yeah. I think maybe like what if it was through education, like how would we do it? Like, is it through programs? Is it through the curriculum?
Yeah,
And like and I think we should also expand on the definition of addiction as well, because I don't think it's just solely
yeah,
on drugs itself.
yeah, yeah. You're right. You're right. You're right. Because you see, behavioral addiction. So far, what we've been talking about is substance. Okay, there's such a thing called behavioral addictions as well, which we didn't talk about, and this became more evident after the pandemic. Behavioral addictions refer to gambling addictions. Now, of course, gaming, um, pornography, sex addictions. These are all known as behavioral addictions. It became more obvious post pandemic because we spent hours and hours, or literally weeks,
Yeah.
sitting in our camp. So we all picked up different kinds of things, and some of us became dependent. Gaming addictions
Hmm.
is quite rampant now. You see the youth spending hours on the computer, and it's so bad that we hear people committing suicide, jumping off the building, angry, fighting. You switch off the internet, I'll jump. You off my game, I'll commit suicide. Yeah.
Oh
So
my, yeah, yeah, that's right. But also that but not only that, but I think what's also worrying is that a lot of, I think, are we moving to Gen Alpha now? I think so, right? Gen Alpha. Yeah, it should be Gen Alpha. It should be Gen Alpha. Yeah. That they've become too addicted to their gadgets that they just have a hard time
yes, yes,
socializing, and I think that really hinders the performance in academics, and also
Yes.
the way you interact with people. Yeah.
Yeah. There is a term now called known as digital dualism. Okay.
Oh,
Digital
maybe I guess
dualism.
maybe the Gen Z version is iPad kids. I think so.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah,
Okay.
please continue on the thing you just said.
Okay. So digital dualism basically means I have two identities. I have an identity in my digital world where I could be a robber, a thief, a rapist, a gangster, or a police, or a cop, or whatever. Then I have an identity in the real world where I'm a father, a mother, a brother, a sister, whatever. Digital dualism, and they actually live with this, and it's going to get worse soon. People are
Ah,
having
yeah,
these
yeah, yeah, yeah.
identities, you know.
True,
Um,
true.
because of behavioral addiction, since we're talking about it, we are seeing more and more youth presenting problems, presenting symptoms or rather of autism, symptoms of attention deficit disorder, symptoms of social anxiety. Why? Because they spend so much of time on the laptop or the computer that they do not know how to communicate with the real world. You know, they spend so much of time on the TikTok and Instagram. They like short burst messages, 20 seconds, 30 seconds. The brain cannot focus on long,
Yeah,
lectures or classes.
true, true, true. And I think it's a huge problem, especially when I'm pretty sure you're familiar with brain rot, right?
Yes, yes,
Yeah,
of course.
yeah, and like I personally for me, I hate it because like it's just annoying to hear the repetitive sound again and
Yeah,
again.
lah. Yeah, lah.
Yeah, but like I mean, it's funny, but like, I think there should be a limit when that should stop. But actually, before we end this segment,
Yeah.
I do want to ask, like, the government has also done some programs to help, educate university students regarding addiction. I think some examples are like Shields and Tomorrow's Leaders, right? But just to end it off, like, how do you think is and these programs are effective if you know by any chance, but even if you don't know, like, what programs will you suggest to improve the education regarding drug addiction?
I think what we need to do is first stop using scare tactics. Going to prisons and showing caning. Yes and no, but scare tactics don't work. I think what we should do is go to universities and talk to them and tell them, look, these are the symptoms, these are the causes, and you know what? If you have a problem, it's okay. You can come and talk to me separately. You don't have to put up your hand now, and it's confidential. That's what we should do. Build a relationship with them, build some trust with them. And for this to happen, we need people trained in these areas, psychologists, or counselors, or therapists, clinicians, to go and talk and give. Just because we go, we talk, we hit the KPI, 100 talks done, 15 workshops done, that's not going to make a change. You need to build a relationship, because as you are lecturing or you're teaching or talking, people are Googling and checking whatever you're saying. Students nowadays, they check you, they correct you. You can't tell them, you can't bullshit, basically. So you need to build relationship.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think that's true. Yeah. We are quite overly sensitive about things that
Yeah,
are being said.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
What do you call it? Woke, I think. Yeah. I mean, I don't think we're that woke, but we can get overly sensitive on certain things that
Yes, yes,
matters to us a lot. Yeah.
yes, yes, yes.
But
So,
mhm. Okay.
go on,
Uh,
sorry.
yeah. So, but unfortunately, we kind of have to end this episode today. I know
Yeah,
this. I'm pretty sure you. I think throughout this entire episode, I think both of us could feel that there are a lot of things that we can expand
yeah,
upon. Yeah, and like we can properly like look into the questions that are really important, that we can properly like dissect everything properly. But I think as of now, I think we did a good job in terms of just laying out the brief idea, the brief conversations, to at least get people started to talk about, addiction, to raise awareness about the act in itself, right? I think that's more important, and then and hopefully we can have a follow up discussion to really delve into the deeper questions that I think that could make this conversation more fruitful at the end of the day, right?
sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
So thank you so much, Dr. Prem, for joining aboard. on this podcast, and I hope we can really have that second section that so that we can really properly look into the acting itself.
Sure. Thank you for having me, Haikal. To me, this is a fantastic opportunity. I hope we're able to make a difference, and hopefully somebody out there hears and benefits. So thank you very much, and I'm very much looking forward to chatting with you again. Thank you.
Yep, no worries. And with that, thank you for listening to our episode with Dr. Prem. You can follow us on Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, and also on our YouTube page. And please subscribe to our YouTube and also Spotify. We will be very appreciative. Our goal for this year is that we want to reach 1K subscribers for YouTube and also Instagram. So it'll be very helpful that if you guys do hit the subscribe button and also give support to Dr. Prem's work and also the discussion that we have for this episode and for later episode as well. So with that, thank you so much for listening to One on Joma Lepa, and we will tune into the next episode. See you then.
Thank you. Bye bye.
All right.